परम पूज्य गुरुदेव स्वामी Chinmayananda ji. Ageless Guru. The inspirational life of Swami Chinmayananda. A book by Radhika Krishna Kumar. Dedicated to Pujya Guruji Swami Tejomayananda ji, the spiritual successor of Pujya Gurudev Swami Chinmayananda ji, and the ex-head of Chinmaya Mission worldwide, whose immeasurable love, encouragement and blessings made this book possible. The life of Swami Chinmayananda is indeed a saga of extraordinary spiritual strength, immeasurable love, tireless service, and undying metaphysical reach. It is a life which, in less than half a century of effort, left behind a worldwide organization, hundreds of institutions, and millions of devotees, all aimed at a single thing: the perpetuity of nobility in man. This book is a humble yet sincere, authentic attempt to trace the life of and teachings of the greatest modern sage I have ever known. Neither the written nor the spoken word can ever successfully attempt to describe the inconceivable or measure the infinite. And yet there is an inexplicable joy in sharing with others the facts and events in the lives of great masters. This is so because such a sharing fascinates the intellect, inspires the heart, and rejuvenates the soul. It reminds man of the glorious being that he can be and gives him the drive to reach beyond human limits to touch divine heights. Swami Chinmayananda has done more to spread the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita than any other I know of. On his Mahasamadhi, a devotee remarked, "On this day, Lord Krishna, the teacher of the Gita, will rise in the heavens to greet Swamiji with the words, 'Welcome, my son. You have done more for the perpetuation of the Gita than even I dared to.'" Today, several organizations and teachers have adopted his unique and remarkably effective style of teaching. Yet, when he began his life's work, the world's oldest scriptures were being taught in tiny, exclusive pockets, shrouded in orthodoxy to expand the reach and savor sacred touch of the perennial philosophy to millions. It needed a spiritual giant, and such a one was Swami Chinmayananda. Radhika Krishna Kumar has done full justice to Swamiji's life and work. I appreciate her devotion to Swamiji. This book will appeal to and inspire people of all ages and from all walks of life. I am certain that Swamiji's elevating thoughts and eternal presence graces and blesses all of humanity and will continue to do so. I congratulate the publishers for taking up the noble endeavor of helping many more to share in the joy what we in the Chinmay mission carry in our hearts. परम पूज्य गुरु जी स्वामी तेजोमयानंदा. Prologue. Our story begins on a football field, an unusual place you may think to begin the narrative of the life of a great Hindu sage. Perhaps you expected it to begin in a temple or a sacred city. But everything about Swami Chinmayananda's life was unusual and extraordinary. The football field was being prepared for what looked like a public meeting. Tiny orange and white flags and festoons flapped along the boundary of the field. A large stage was erected at one end. On it, as a backdrop, stood a huge cutout of the symbol Om with pictures of Indian saints propped up on either side of it. In the center was a simple floor level sloping desk with a plain saffron mat behind it. In front of the stage was painted the words Gita Jnana Yajna. Volunteers wearing saffron scarves bustled about setting up simple stalls in one corner of the field, selling books, cassettes, posters, and stationery, giving information and offering help. Most of the area in front of the stage was covered with carpets spread out over a large part of the field. On either side of the carpets were placed neat rows of chairs. As the sun set, people began entering the field. In less than an hour, the peaceful audience swelled to over 10,000, filling up the floor levels, seating as well as the chairs. Vedic chanting and bhajans over the mic helped maintain a meditative silence in the throng. A few idle passers-by peered in at the huge but orderly gathering. One could hear snatches of their conversation. Such a large gathering. Is it a political meeting? Is a film star expected? No, it is a Gita Jnana Yajna by Swami Chinmayananda. A religious talk attracting thousands. Unbelievable. Why don't you attend the lecture and see for yourself? The small group also walked in and sat down at the edge of the gathering. On the dot of 6:29 p.m., a car entered the field with 4 two-wheelers leading the way and 4 following. Amidst Vedic chanting, the saffron-clad Swami was ceremoniously led up to the stage. A hush descended on the gathering as Swami Chinmayananda began his discourse on the Bhagavad Gita in his powerful, stentorian voice. Thus began another Gita Jnani Yajna, a spiritual talk on the Bhagavad Gita. Swami Chinmayananda rendered hundreds of week-long discourses, traveling all over the world for over 40 years. In these 4 decades, he gave the Bhagavad Gita the status of the Bible of the Hindus in almost every corner of the globe. He established over 70 Chinmay Vidyalayas, schools in India, colleges, 247 Chinmay mission centers, youth centers, Yuva Kendras, and Chinmay cultural classes, Bal Vihars in over 30 countries. He established hospitals, training centers for nurses, old age homes, free food centers, cultural centers, value-based management institutes, and many other service organizations. He served several American and Asian universities as visiting professor of Indian philosophy and conducted university lecture tours in many countries. Less tangible but more telling is the fact that he transformed thousands of lives by his divine love and inspiring guidance. He set up ashrams in various parts of the world to train dedicated men and women to teach the profound Hindu scriptures, scriptural texts. Millions benefited, finding as they did stability, happiness, and peace of mind. He helped bring about the Hindu renaissance of a people who had fallen into forgetfulness of their unparalleled heritage. 300 years of foreign rule had succeeded in making Indians feel and behave like an inferior race. Even the sacred language of Sanskrit had faded in importance. It was like learning to walk again. Swami Chinmayananda wrote and edited countless texts and books drawing out the practical implications of the Gita, the Upanishads, and other sacred scriptures. His was a great and inspiring life that fills every Indian with pride and love for India and its ancient, evolved, and glorious way of life. Childhood. What we have is a gift from Him. What we do with what we have is our gift to Him. Kerala is a land of peaceful backwaters, swaying palms, thick forests, and lush fields. On 8th May 1916, a fact of little consequence to the ageless Guru, but nevertheless of significance to you and me. A son was born to a family in Ernakulam, Kerala. The baby's parents, Parvati and Kuttan Menon, were from a distinguished land-owning family that lived on agriculture. Being the firstborn, the baby's birth brought much joy to the family. Just hours after his birth, the family astrologer called in to cast his horoscope, predicted worldwide fame for the newborn. At that time, Chattambi Swamigal, a realized saint, happened to visit the family. He had many mystical and yogic powers and was known for his close friendship with the saintly figure Sri Narayan Guru. In a traditional naming ceremony, Chattambi Swamigal named the child Balakrishnan, meaning the child Krishna. The other sacred rituals in a child's life, such as his first outing, usually to a temple, his first taste of rice, the piercing of his ear lobes, and tonsure were conducted in how due course. The child Balakrishnan was raised in the loving and secure atmosphere of a joint family with all the ladies of the household mothering him equally. Chattambi Swamigal visited the family once again when Balakrishnan was 2 years old. She is Swami Chinmayananda's mother, the hand that rocked the cradle. Chattambi Swamigal visited the house when Balakrishnan was 2 years old. On this visit, the saint paid special attention to young Balan. He placed the child on his chest and played with him often. As they interacted, the sage spoke to the toddler in a strange language. The child seemed to listen with avid interest, while no one else understood a word. When Balan's mother asked the sage what was going on between them, he smiled, saying that the child understood him perfectly. He added the words, "Don't worry, I have taught him everything." The saint also conducted Balan's initiation into education through the sacred ritual of writing holy words on a plate of rice, Aksharabhyasam. Balan heartily participated in the many festivals that were a part of his childhood, such as Onam, the harvest festival, and Vishu, New Year's Day. He thus spent the first 5 years of his life in innocent play and fun. But life is not always serene. Tragedy struck. Balan's childhood was rocked by his mother's sudden demise after her third child was born. His aunts and grandmothers quickly took over the care of the motherless child. He was so tenderly raised that he hardly felt the loss of his mother. Chattambi Swamigal continued to visit the family after. Often, the quiet peace radiating from the serene yogi drew children to him easily, but it was Balan who always found favor with him. The saint also mentioned as the astrologer had done earlier that the child would reach extraordinary heights. A powerful influence in Balan's childhood was the family prayers conducted every evening by the ladies and children. The worship began with a bhajan and included prayers, chants, and offerings of flowers to the family deities. Having to sit still for 2 hours was a painfully boring experience for the child. But from his boredom was born a strange way of passing the time. Balan would look at his favorite picture in the puja room, a calm and meditative visage of Lord Shiva with the Ganga flowing from his locks, the crescent moon on his forehead, and a snake coiled around his neck. Balan would then close his eyes and try to picture the loving, serene face of Lord Shiva. He would repeatedly open his eyes and look at the picture and then close his eyes and to visualize it. At that time, little did the young Balan know that the simple game he had discovered to pass the time was actually a powerful form of meditation used by spiritual students for mental purification. This little game must have influenced Balan deeply without his being aware of it. The humble beginning of Balan's schooling began in Sri Ramavarma Boys' School when he was 5 years old. It was an English medium school where he also learnt Malayalam and Sanskrit. He would spend his evenings playing football or badminton. His holidays were spent visiting relatives, one of whom was the wife of the Raja of Cochin. He also spent time with his sisters Padmini and Kanakam, playing with them or helping them with their studies. His childhood was generally filled with fun and pranks. The death of his mother had made the other ladies of the house even more indulgent towards him. He thus grew into a confident and happy teenager, but a fairly spoiled one too. When we are born, we enter the world crying, and our relations and neighbors stand around and smile. Let us order our lives in such a manner that when we leave the world, we shall do so smiling in satisfaction, and let others be left crying at the departure of such a noble one. Youth. Your parents give you the body, you brought your mind yourself. To cultivate it and grow within is your own responsibility. Balan began his college education at Maharaja's College, Ernakulam. The family the family's overindulgence of its motherless child had made Balan a playful teenager. He played practical jokes on his teachers to entertain his classmates during college hours and aimlessly hung out with his friends every evening after college. He was the source of much anxiety to his family, but this was not the only side of Balan's nature. There was another side of his personality, a serious and responsible one. He was also a loyal and generous friend, always ready to help his classmates with money for college fees and books. He often brooded on the meaning of life and spent time in flights of intellectual thought. At anything done unquestioningly, was prostrating oneself before sadhus or mechanical visits to temples. Balan's major subject was science, but he found little in it to interest him. With his photographic memory and natural mental agility, he got through his tests without much effort. But by the final exam, Balan's lack of concentration and interest caught up with him, and he could not pursue science anymore. He changed his focus to the humanities, continuing his college education at St. Thomas College, Trichur, Kerala. College life in Trichur found Balan a questioning, overconfident teenager. On one side, he challenged the existence and whereabouts of God and poked fun at many rituals. On the other, His childhood love for the serene face of Lord Shiva never faded from his memory, and he would visualize it each night sitting up in bed chanting Om Namah Shivaya. The latest fashions in attire had their effect on Balan too. He wore silk shirts, gold chains, and plastered his oiled hair in the latest style of the day, much to the amused annoyance of his strict but kind father. The elders of his family worried about his playfulness, but he won them over by his loving and caring ways. In turn, the time Balan gave to his elders helped him to learn much about their philosophical and stoic acceptance of life and their love for prayer. At this time, he had the good fortune to meet Mahatma Gandhi on one of Gandhiji's visits to Kerala. The meeting, though, left little impact on Balan, who was not particularly interested in politics. As his college years went by, his family could see that he had a brilliant mind but lacked academic application. Another cause for worry was Balan's agnostic nature and doubts about rituals and sacred beliefs. What the family did not know was that the so called arrogant teenager was doing Om Namah Shivaya Japa secretly throughout his youth. He was also receiving glimpses of the depth of Vedic chants and the significance of rituals that were a regular feature in his tradition bound family. Thus, deep within the consciousness of the pleasure loving and separately flamboyant young man lay the firm foundation of a deeply spiritual personality. Soon Balan left home to join Lucknow University for further studies. It was here that the first turning point occurred in the life of a lotus eater. Youth are not useless, they are used less. Youth are not careless, they are cared less. In the thick of India's freedom struggle, strive on with tireless enthusiasm, strive on to reach your goal. Without a goal, the best in you can never express itself. The Quit India movement is one of the most significant events in India's struggle for freedom. It caused mass strikes, protest marches, and demonstrations all over the country. Industrialists and farmers, careermen and women, housewives, and most significantly, students left classes and colleges in huge numbers to join the freedom movement. One of the thousands of students who sacrificed their education for the country was Balkrishna Menon. He too left Lucknow University to join the independence movement. From writing and distributing pamphlets to encouraging others to join in, he participated enthusiastically in the students' activities of the movement. Soon, an arrest warrant was issued against him, and he was forced to flee to Kashmir and go into hiding there. During this period, he would occasionally travel to Delhi to visit his close friend Shroff and find out current and often secret news about British plans to be a fear of being arrested. On one of his trips to Delhi, he was almost caught. In a quick bid to escape, he barged into a building that turned out to be a intelligence British Intelligence Communications Center handling coded messages for the British forces in India. Mistaking Menon to be just another young man looking for a job, the center took him on as a machine operator, expressed by his impressed by his intelligence. The officer soon made Menon his personal assistant. By sheer accident, Menon had gained for himself a good job, safe living quarters inside the British military compound, and a chance to test the fine living of the British in India. Spare time he got to continue studying for his final examinations at Lucknow University. After a while, Menon's boss, the British officer, helped secure his release, knowing that his heart was in the freedom struggle. Menon went to Punjab and back to distributing leaflets and guiding students in their cause for India's freedom. He thought that his arrest warrant would have been forgotten by now, but he was wrong. He was arrested and imprisoned in Delhi. He joined hundreds of other freedom fighters who were held in cold, dark cells and cruelly beaten on their ankles and feet to make them confess their plans and movements. The cold, dirty cells and unhygienic food caused many of the prisoners to contract the feared typhoid fever. Menon too fell victim to it. Due to his already weakened state, he quickly slid into a critical condition. The large numbers of prisoners dying in captivity led to the interrogation of the wardens by the higher authorities. To avoid it, many prisons used to abandon seriously ill or dying prisoners. In this way, the Menon too was thrown out to die on the streets. These are Menon's. This is photo of Menon's intense involvement in the freedom struggle was reflected in his Swadeshi attire, while many of his peers wore Western clothing. A passer-by saw the near-dead Menon and stopped out of compassion. Something about his aristocratic features reminded her of her son fighting a war in Europe. Moved by his emaciated state, she took him home and lovingly nursed him back to good health. Little did this kind soul know then that she had saved the life of a young man who would one day become a global teacher. A spiritual thinker is born. To listen is not merely to hear. We in life hear, but very rarely do we know how to listen. To listen is to hear with an intellectual alertness and attention of awareness. After a long and slow recovery, Menon bid his benefactress a loving farewell. He went to Baroda to recuperate in the home of one of his cousins. He was during this period that Menon began writing articles, thereby making his foray into the world of journalism. It was also during this time that Menon chanced upon a few issues of a ladies' magazine which featured, among many kinds of articles, a series of the saints of the Himalayas. These articles brought back to mind Menon's childhood memories of his bedtime prayers, of his grandmother's enduring faith, and of meeting holy men. Through one such article, Menon came to know of the renowned teacher Swami Shivananda and of the laudable spiritual and educational work he has done from his ashram at Rishikesh. Little did Menon know then that the links in his life were being forged like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle falling into place. On regaining his health, Menon went back to Lucknow University and completed his MA in English literature with honors as well as several courses in journalism. His first job was that of an editor in a local newspaper. Wanting to learn everything about publishing, Menon went to Bombay to work with a well known newspaper called the Free Press Journal. He went on to become the sub editor of the much read newspaper with an all India reach, the National Herald. Through the articles and essays he wrote in the National Herald, he gained the reputation of being a bold and outspoken journalist with deep compassion for the poor and less fortunate. Menon's career as a journalist grew and he gained admission into the world of Delhi's social circuit. At the parties and balls that were an inherent part of cosmopolitan life, Menon got a good chance to closely observe the lives of the rich and the famous. He saw superficial smiles and polite insincerities on the surface, while discontent, envy, and regrets lived beneath. He began to wonder whether serving the poor alone was enough to tackle social problems, since even the rich did not seem to be happy. Menon came to the conclusion that such a shallow life was not for him. As a first step in his search for a more meaningful life, he began spiritual practices even while continuing his career and socializing. This was accompanied by months of deep research into many branches of philosophy, both European and Eastern. The spiritual practices refined his mind, and months of study made his thinking more focused and intense. The agnostic evolves to become a thinker. At about this time, Menon went on a tour of various parts of India. With a few clothes and books, he travelled on a student's train pass. He had no firm plan for this journey. He would get off wherever he felt like and wander around, meeting people and getting to know their minds, how they thought and behaved. On one leg of this journey, Menon saw people rush to the windows of the slowing train to get a glimpse of the divine Arunachala hill. On an impulse, he got down at Tiruvannamalai station. Hearing about the great sage Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, Menon made his way to the Ramana ashram on the hill. He saw Ramana Maharshi reclining on a platform with his eyes closed. Menon sat near, waiting for him to open his eyes, little knowing that this would be an unforgettable experience for him. The realized sage suddenly opened his eyes and looked directly into Menon's eyes. The all-knowing look sent Menon into a trance-like state. When he regained body consciousness, he chose to shrug away this experience, which was strange and discomforting. It was only later that he gained sufficient spiritual knowledge to understand its significance. Long months of reading and spiritual practices led Menon to begin thinking seriously about the scriptures and the lives of saints, their subjective goals and their usefulness to society. Finally, he decided to retire from the social scene for a while and go to the Himalayas to get the inside story about the lives and ways of the holy men who lived there. He hoped to write articles for the National Herald on what he learned from this trip. Divine life begins. Service in this world is the highest prayer. Loving the people around us is the greatest devotion. The first step in Balkrishna Menon's quest for the divine was a trip to Rishikesh, the sacred abode of saints and ascetics for centuries. In Rishikesh, he went to the ashram of Swami Shivananda. A doctor by profession, Swami Shivananda renounced a lucrative practice in British Malaya and Singapore to settle in Ananda Kutir ashram on the banks of the Ganges at Rishikesh. From there, he started a spiritual movement that grew into the world famous Divine Life Society. His work included discourses on the scriptures, the running of charitable hospitals and clinics, publishing a journal, and many other social welfare activities. Menon ashram. He met Swami Shivananda for information on related aspects. He was very surprised to see that his opinion of sannyasi as a lazy, jobless lot was completely wrong. Swami Shivananda and his sincere band of Swamis worked without rest or holidays on the many spiritual and social welfare projects of the ashram. The most menial job as well as highly intellectual work were done with equal enthusiasm, inspired by their selfless way of life. Menon extended his stay many times. Balan the seeker considers renunciation. The inmates noticed participating in its activities and services. At one such evening service, Swami Shivananda suddenly called to him to say a few words on a topic of his own choice. Menon stood tongue-tied. Swami Shivananda consoled him, saying that he could try again later. No one, not even Menon himself, would have dreamt then that he would one day captivate the world with his gifts of oratory. Encouraged by Swami Shivananda, Menon began to give small speeches prepared on given topics at the services. His original and frank ideas reflected his belief in self effort rather than taking the easier way of picking up something from a good book. Seeing Menon's intellectual strengths and other qualities like determination, honesty, and self confidence, Swami Shivananda hinted here to him that he should use his talents to serve God by becoming a Swami sannyasi like himself. However, Menon did not Menon did not want to rush into anything. He went back to his career in Delhi after 3 months in Rishikesh. But life would never again be the same for the spiritual kindled young man. He began reading more about the scriptures, reviewing spiritual books, and traveling often to Rishikesh. Slowly he came to believe that he could live no life other but that of a renunciate. However, Swami Shivananda told him to take more time and to be sure of his decision. At around this time, Menon's close friend of many years, Shroff, died after a long and painful illness. His friend's death badly jolted Menon and further pushed him into searching for the reasons behind life and death, sorrow and joy, and the purpose of human life. With this exalted goal in mind, he moved permanently to Anand Kutir. From there, he undertook an arduous pilgrimage to some of the most sacred shrines in the Himalayas. In life, you may never get what you desire, but you never fail to get what you deserve. Swami Chinmayananda is born. Tranquility is truth, truth is beauty, beauty is bliss, and bliss is divine. On April 24, 1948, the 32-year-old Balkrishnan Menon began his pilgrimage in the Himalayas with two fellow students and a local guide to carry supplies. To Menon, it was a pilgrimage as well as a journalistic assignment. In the Himalayas, the holiest and grandest mountain range in the world, there are countless pilgrim centers, temples, and ashrams. The group planned to visit the four most well known shrines Yamunotri, Gangotri, Badrinath, and Kedarnath, charged with the spiritual energy generated over centuries. These shrines stand as perennial affirmations of human religious ardor. The small group trekked the 180 miles stretch of rough terrain from Rishikesh to Yamunotri. Along the Yamuna River, Menon negotiated his journey barefoot through snow covered mountain passes and rocky trails. He traveled in the natural beauty of the snow capped peaks, silvery rivers, and color splashed valleys, which have given the Himalayas the epithet paradise on earth. He reached Gangotri, revered as the abode of some of the greatest religious masters of India in Gangotri. From a small spot called Gomukh, 13,500 feet above sea level, the mighty Ganges starts as a mere trickle. The trekkers met many great sages. Some spent their lives in constant meditation, some in total silence, without food, and in many stages of austerity. Menon sat for 2 hours of meditation along the Ganges at twilight, experiencing a bliss that was far greater than anything the world we know contains. From Gangotri, Menon and his colleagues trekked the 115 miles to Kedarnath, passing breathtaking scenery but also crossing marshes, rivers, glaciers, and steep slopes. On the trek from Gangotri to Kedarnath, another momentous event in Menon's extraordinary life occurred. At Uttarkashi lived Swami Tapovanam, known as the wisest of the Himalayan sages, constantly reveling in the Lord and living in a small hermitage without even adequate clothing. Tapovan Maharaj, as he is also known, was a legendary ascetic. Menon and his group had the good fortune to meet Tapovan Maharaj. This was Menon's first meeting with the great master, who would soon become his guru and mentor. It created a deep impact on Menon's mind, intensifying his desire to learn the scriptures. After visiting the ancient Kedarnath temple at a height of 12,000 feet above sea level, they began the 105-mile trek to Badrinath, one of the most sacred Hindu shrines in the world. Menon was greatly inspired by the unearthly beauty of the place, the spiritual energy it emanated, and the austere sages radiating joy with nothing to call their own except ragged clothes and a few vessels. When the rest of the group turned back, he stayed for he stayed behind for several weeks. This pilgrimage to the world's holiest mountain range changed Menon's life, giving it a definite sense of direction. He returned convinced that the only life for him was that of a renunciate dedicated to the love of God and the service of mankind. Soon after his pilgrimage in the Himalayas, Menon requested Swami Shivananda to initiate him into a holy order of sannyas. Knowing that the time was right, Swami Shivananda asked Menon to write to his father, asking for permission to renounce all worldly goods and attachments. Swami Shivananda belonged to the sannyas lineage of the Shankaracharyas of the Sringeri Math, where parental permission was a prerequisite for a person to take sannyas. Menon wrote to his father about all the events that led to his decision and sought his permission to start a new life as a monk. His father was stunned that his wayward and agnostic son had been transformed into a deeply spiritual, disciplined intellectual. He readily wrote his letter of consent to Swami Shivananda. On the 25th of February 1949, on the holy day of Shivaratri, Menon was initiated into the divine order of renunciation, sannyas, by Swami Shivananda. He went through the special rites of a purifying bath to ensure donning of the ochre robe and a vow of renouncing all physical and material needs to live an austere life of spiritual study, service, and prayer. The young man Balakrishna Menon became the ascetic bearing the name Chinmayananda Saraswati. Henceforth, he would live only on the food offered to him by devotees, have no possessions except a few sets of ochre robes, vessels, and books, no family and no citizenship or voting rights. His only wealth would be his knowledge and the grace of the Lord and his teacher. His past life as Menon faded away like a dream. Swami Chinmayananda was born on that Shivaratri day at Rishikesh. Love is not love if it does not serve and sacrifice. Sri Swami Tapovan Maharaj, Guru of Swami Chinmayananda, revered as one of the most spiritually evolved sages to adorn the Himalayas. Studying under the Guru, real service to the and strive our best to live up to them. The first thing that Swami Chinmayananda did was to gain a thorough mastery of the Hindu scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, and the many important texts, works, verses, and fables that have kept Hinduism alive for thousands of years. Swami Shivananda directed him to seek out the austere ascetic Swami Tapovanam, live with him and study the scriptures under him. At that time, Swami Tapovanam was at Brahmananda Ashram at Rishikesh. With Swami Shivananda's blessings, Swami Chinmayananda approached Tapovan Maharaj and was accepted as a student. Tapovan Maharaj was a loving yet strict teacher who had high expectations of his students, insisted on complete concentration, and set exacting standards of behavior. He had led a life of exemplary literary achievement and scriptural scholarship, rigid austerity and discipline, and extraordinary spiritual experiences. He was held in the highest respect and devotion in the world of ascetics and sages. Swami Shivananda used to refer to him as the glory of the Himalayas. Studying under the realized master, Swami Tapovan Maharaj, this period of Swami Chinmayananda's life saw his transformation from individual to Swami, a master. Swami Chinmayananda lived with Tapovan Maharaj in Rishikesh.